One of the most popular option strategies out there is the covered call. The covered call strategy is probably the first strategy most options traders learn, especially those coming from the stock trading world. And of course, the covered call plays a major component in the wheel strategy, which is my favorite option strategy. I even wrote a book about the wheel strategy called the Super Wheel Option Strategy, available on Amazon. Now, one of the criticisms that I hear from some people about the covered call is some people really fear selling a covered call on a stock. They have shares of whatever stock, ABC stock, and then they sell a call against it, right, to create the covered call. And then ABC stock explodes in price, and they've limited their upside potential on the trade by selling that call, because a covered call, you have a limited reward, right? You have a small limited reward, but that's not what you wanted when the stock explodes. You wanted all of that potentially unlimited reward to the upside that you would have had you just held on to the shares by themselves without selling the call. And you know what? That is a fair criticism, but is there anything you can really do about it? Because I can understand, people crying a little bit about a stock exploding in price and dang, I shouldn't have sold the call. But when the stock goes down, of course, you're happy you put on the covered call, because the covered call lessens your loss. And actually lowers your cost basis a little bit because you're making money on the short call, of course, when the stock goes down. So, there's a trade-off. You can't have your cake and eat it too, right? You're reducing your risk by selling the call, on a covered call, but obviously you have to give up a little bit of potential reward. That's the trade-off. But if you really fear missing out on an upside explosion in price, for example, Nvidia, I've been wheeling Nvidia a lot here over the last year or so, but Nvidia sometimes makes pretty good size moves up. Do I want to sell a covered call in Nvidia? Let me put on a short covered call here. So let's imagine that I buy 100 shares of Nvidia and then I go sell the 150 call here. So I'm going to buy 100 shares, currently trading at $135 a share. I'm going to sell the 150 call. So, I still have $15 worth of room between the 135 current price of the stock and the 150 call. If I go to the analysis, let me go ahead and turn off all my existing positions and just do the covered call risk profile here. Let me zoom out a little bit so we can see this a little clearer. And here is the risk profile. You can see we make the max profit if the stock finishes above the 150 short call. In this case, I would make about $1,600 max profit on this particular trade, the overall trade of the shares plus the one short call. But what if Nvidia exploded to $180? Well, $180, my max profit is going to be $1,600, right? It's going to be the same as if Nvidia finished at 150.01 or 180, right? This doesn't matter. I'm still going to make the same max profit on the trade, where if I own the shares outright without the call, of course, I have, potentially much more profit, because, I'd make, like a bajillion dollars on the shares here. Now, for most stocks, I think if you put on the covered call, just be happy with the covered call. But if you put on a covered call and a stock that you think really does have potential to explode in price and you feel strongly about it, here's what you could do. There's nothing wrong with going and putting on a little extra kicker to the upside, just in case the stock does make a big move against you. So you can keep your covered call on. There's nothing wrong with that. But then maybe above the covered call, go and buy some cheap, trashy call debit spread. A really far out of the money call debit spread. In this case, it's not going to cost me hardly any money at all. Matter of fact, let me turn off the covered call so I can see how much this spread actually would cost. Yeah, I'm only going to pay $40 for that spread. Let me bump that up. I can pay more than that. $70 here in this case for this spread. And then let me put the covered call back on. So the covered call will sell the call once again, same strike at 50. Then I'll go ahead and add this little cheap little way out of the money call debit spread kicker trade, just so I have a little extra profit boost should this thing really go up. And so now I get about $1,513 max profit here in this area. But if it really went up, say $15 past my covered call, right? If it went $15 higher, then I get a few hundred extra dollars more. Instead of $1,500, I get, $2,000 in this case. So a $500 little extra bonus shouldn't make a really far move against me. So this is what I would suggest doing if you're really concerned, if you really fear the stock's just going to make some crazy move to the upside. Put on some cheap, trashy, way out of the money call debit spread on your covered calls. You could actually put on multiple of these. You could put on several of them since they're so cheap in this case, right? You could really bump this up. Matter of fact, let me go ahead and show you this in action. Since this was such a cheap trade, maybe instead of just buying one call debit spread, I go ahead and buy 3 of them. So now in this case, this little area here, I'm only making about $13.75 max profit. So I had to give up about $150 for these additional debit spreads. But now if I finish above the 165 call here, I'm making nearly $3,000. I'm making $28.75 profit. So that's just something you could play with, something you could consider. I don't know if this trade necessarily has any kind of official name for me. These kinds of trades, I just call these kicker trades, where you put on a trade and then you have an extra little kicker, to the upside or to the downside, depending on what you're doing. For me, I'll call this a covered call with a kicker, a call debit spread kicker. It's like the cherry on top. Now, obviously, these way out of the money call debit spreads, they're not going to hit that often. You're not going to win on these trades very much. And I would say overall, they will probably have a negative expectancy. Because of that, you wouldn't want to put these on for every single covered call trade you make. This is not something you want to do. You're actually costing yourself money if you just put these things on every single time you put on a covered call. But again, this is for those situations where you're really concerned, where you're really worried because you think the stock that you have a covered call in already, you think, man, this stock, my gut feeling says this thing could explode in price. Then go ahead and put on that little extra kicker. In this case, it makes sense. That way, you're not bummed out when the stock explodes in price. And that way you make that little bit of extra profit, should you get that crazy move that you were kind of expecting anyway. So that's it for this video, guys. Please consider subscribing to the DT Options Discord server if you're not already a member. I hold a live 1-hour voice chat there each and every trading day. You guys get to see what I'm trading. I share my screen as far as my trading platform. You get to see each and every opening and closing trade I make. Plus, you guys get to share with me what you're trading. We have a nice little community over there, and we'd love to have you. Peace, guys.